Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah McIntyre. And today we are carrying on with our lineup of fantastic guests for you to meet and learn about. And today I have got the wonderful Erika Anderson, who has got up at the crack of dawn to talk to us. Hi, Erika.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming on and bringing your light. We've already been laughing. So I just know this is going to be one of those podcasts where I'm trying to remember that I'm interviewing and not just being silly. So Erika, start off by just telling the listeners a little bit about you, what you do.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I love your podcast, Hannah. You are so fun. So I consider myself a spiritual medium, and I think that I call myself that because I think of it kind of as an umbrella term. I've been an acupuncturist for 20 years, so I've worked in the healing realm and Reiki practitioner, kind of do my own style now. And then I work as a psychic and an evidential medium. So that is what I do.
Amazing. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. And you've had quite a journey that has led you down to this path with all these job titles that you've got, haven't you?
It's been a long journey. I look back now and it all makes sense. But at the time, everything was always very confusing. I was always felt like, what is happening to me? And then once I was on the path of mediumship and mediumship development, it's almost like I could see the pieces falling in place.
Love that.
And that itself was life-changing. So yeah.
So how did it start us at the beginning, because that's where I like to start. How did it all begin for you? How did you begin this journey?
It began as a child. I like to think of my childhood as filled with what I thought were ghosts and angels. Um, I saw spirit at a really young age, and I was absolutely terrified. I thought that was ghosts and demons. I was raised in a super religious environment, a very loving, wonderful environment, but it was Catholic faith. And I really was under the belief that I shouldn't have experiences like that. I really thought that I shouldn't be powerful enough to even see anything or feel anything, that it needed to come through someone else for it to be okay. And but yeah, I remember probably my earliest experience, I was maybe 8 or 9, 10 years old, and I was in bed, wide awake, and someone came into my room, and it was a man, and he was, a little bit off the ground. He looked like a quintessential ghost. And I just kept closing my eyes and opening my eyes, covering my head, and he just wouldn't leave. And he came back 3 nights in a row. And finally, I told myself the story, and I said, "Oh, he's here. He's helping my mom during the day, and he just checks on us and makes sure we're all safe at night." And so I told myself that story, and I started believing that story. And then I wasn't scared of that particular quote unquote ghost anymore. But things like that happened a lot as a child, and I didn't tell anybody. I thought something was wrong with me. I was terrified that something was wrong with me and that I would go to hell. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's a lot as a little girl to feel that way.
Of course. Now, I'm a bit of an atheist. I've got real faith, but religion for me causes more problems than it brings. And that's just my personal opinion. But that perfectly sums it up for me, is that the way you just said, I'm not powerful enough to have this spirit communication, so it must be wrong, is
Yeah.
such an amazing it's so amazing that you can see that now, the healing work you must have done to understand that thought process of 8-year-old Erika. That's pretty profound, isn't it?
The healing process has been one of the greatest journeys of my life. Absolutely. I kind of think of two different experiences in my life that like have blown me open more than anything else. And one was becoming a mother.
Mm.
Becoming a mother taught me how much I could love. I had no idea the capacity that I had inside of me to love. And it was like everything changed in my life at that moment. And then the other one was the spiritual awakening that came after mediumship came back to me. And that spiritual awakening and development, which I'm still in, of course,
Mhm.
also just rectified so much about the world to me. And I'm just forever grateful for that experience, for the development itself. Like, mediumship is wonderful. I'm so glad that I can act as a medium, but the spiritual awakening that came with it has been life-changing for
And
me
was
personally.
was there a trigger for that spiritual awakening, or was it just a series of
Yeah.
events? There was.
Well, so the childhood experience was shut down pretty quickly for me. It was too scary, and I felt like something was wrong, and I didn't want to go to hell. And
Yeah.
then in my 20s, and then in my 20s, I I didn't know that I was an empath, and so I just had crippling anxiety, and was always feeling people's emotions and energies. I had no idea what was going on with me, but yet I was drawn to the healing arts. So I was going to classes, and I was learning about Reiki. I became um, interested in energy healing, but I still didn't really fully know what that was. Then fast forward, I became a mother. My heart blew open, and life got really busy. And then I was kind of progressing really fast through life, really focusing on work. And one of my children almost died, and it was the worst experience I've ever had in my life. Like, I can't even describe the pain that I felt, and the anxiety came back, and it's like my whole life stopped.
Yeah.
And one day I was like, I should really start meditating. And I started meditating. I know this is not everyone's journey, but for me, it shifted my consciousness just enough that I had decreased anxiety. And then one day, something happened to me when I was meditating that I didn't know could happen to a person. It was like fireworks were going off in my body, and I
Wow.
could feel like light coursing all the way from my toes up to my head. And it was like the most exhilarating feeling I ever had. And I came to later realize that's what's called your Kundalini awakening. It's like your life force, like opening and moving. And um, after that happened, all of these weird things started happening to me. I would be lying in bed, and orbs would be all around. I could see like lights, and I'd put my little boy to bed. He was a baby, and it was like people would be in the room with us, and it was just little golden balls, but I knew that they were like our ancestors. And like flickering lights would happen. It just became like this experience, and I was like not afraid anymore. It was like I could see the difference of me as a little girl to what was happening now. And I thought back, like, if this happened to me when I was a little girl, I would have asked my parents to commit me to a hospital, right?
Yeah.
Now I was just like, this is the most beautiful opening, and I don't know what's happening or where it's going. And then one night, I had a dream visitation, and I didn't know what a dream visitation was. I didn't know anything about mediumship. And my friend's dad, from when I was in high school, she was my best friend. He came in my dream. It's a very long story. I can spare you the story, but do you
Don't,
want me
if
to
you
tell
want.
you?
No,
Okay.
share it. Share it.
So it was just a few months after my son had almost died. This all happened very quickly. And um, I was like, there was a tornado going on in my dream. And so my whole family, we had to go underground into this tornado shelter. And we walked down into this tornado shelter, and it was like a bus station or a train station, kind of like in Hogwarts when they're all in the train station. It was like that. And there were just people moving everywhere. And I was immediately lost from my family. And I was just walking, and I was trying to find my children and my husband too, probably, but and I was trying to
Yeah.
find them. And I saw across the train tracks my friend's dad, who had died, decades ago. And I walked over to him, and he was then holding my little boy. And I said, "Hi." And he said, "Oh, you can see me." And I said, "Yeah, I can see you." And he handed me back my son, and he goes, "Your son is going to be okay." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And I was like, "How are you?" And he said, "I'm doing so good. Please tell my friend and my friend's mother I'm okay and I'm happy." And I said, I'll call her today. I haven't talked to her in, 10 years. And so that happened, and it was like this profound experience. And then we all found each other in the train station, and we went back up, and I woke up my husband after that, and I told him about what happened, and he was crying and I was crying. We were still in so much trauma from almost losing our son. And then the next night, that man in my dream visitation came back in body and sat at the end of my bed, and he was holding up a picture of my friend. And he was just, I don't know if I couldn't hear him or if he didn't know how to talk in spirit. I don't know. I didn't know anything. And it was a picture of my friend, like, remember to call her. And I was terrified at that moment because I've never had anyone sit at the end of my bed since I was a little girl. And, but I did, and it was a beautiful experience. And so that was kind of the beginning of quote unquote mediumship.
Wow.
And then when that happened, I was like, wow, all of these weird phenomena have been happening. I need to figure out what's going on. And I actually called my friend Pearl, who is an evidential medium and who I do the podcast with now. And she kind of helped me guide through some of the processes. And that's kind of how it all began.
Incredible. Absolutely amazing. And obviously your son was okay, and
Yeah.
that's just set you on that incredible journey. So the spirit that visited you when you were a child, the man, have you ever seen him since? Have you ever found out from spirit? Because this is always my question with things like this, is we know that spirit are way more intelligent than we are. They understand way more than us in our human. So they wouldn't have wanted to scare you.
Right.
So what the heck was he doing?
Right. Why was he there? Like floating in my room. I can still see him clear as day, like in my memory of what he. And, I have asked spirit that, and the message that I get back is that the story I told myself as a little girl was more accurate than anything, that he wasn't really there for me, but I was able to see him. And so being seen was something that felt like a connection. I really actually think he was probably there for my mom.
Amazing.
Yeah. And yeah, because when I like connect in with his, when I open myself to even feel the memory, I still don't feel like he was there for me. He seemed like an observer of our life.
Yeah.
So
I love
so
it. It's just so fascinating to me. And that's a really interesting point you've just made, actually, that of course they're around all of us all the time. It's just that not all of us can see them. I mean, I don't see spirit. I wish I did, but I don't. Not often anyway. But it is that same thing, isn't it? Yeah, maybe he's been checking on everybody and you just happen to be able to see him, which is so funny. I love it. I really,
love
really
it
love
too.
it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you now work with people, reuniting them with their loved ones, doing evidential mediumship, as well as still working with your healing as well. I mean, I think they all play into each other and everything like that. So how has your mediumship changed? How's it developed? What can you see that's different there?
I feel like at the beginning, my mediumship was on everything. I could hear, see, feel, know, understand everything right away when it like turned on again as an adult. And it was, I think I needed that to feel wowed and blown away by it enough to want to follow the path again. And then a few months later, it's like the light dimmed, right? It's like all my abilities dimmed. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, how can I go from hearing an Irish accent to barely even knowing what this person is trying to convey? And that's when I felt like I needed to study under a mentor. It was like, okay, this is a part of who you are and what you're supposed to do, but now you need to understand the ethics and the development and the purpose and who we are and what we're trying to do. And so I'd say from that very beginning point to, the development process is forever. But for me, that beginning of it was very significant. I understood more about mediumship, and I understand the purpose of it and the surrender of it. So I feel like my mediumship again has blossomed into a place of working with all of my clairs, some stronger than others, of
Mhm.
course. Um, but I think my mediumship is something that I can count on. What's changed for me is the energy work. And now I can do energy work in a different way. I feel like when I was doing energy work before, I was really focused on how I could shift the energy, how I could feel the weakness in the body or the excess in the body, and I could put my hands on and really target things. And
Mhm.
now I recognize that I really shouldn't do that. I feel like for me personally, now I open my awareness and I become a channel just like I am with a mediumship. And it's so much stronger and so much more powerful than anything I ever thought I could do. It's like they were waiting for me to get out of the way. Like, thank God she's done trying here. And so I think that's what shifted the most. Like, now I can see that. It's like when I let go of mediumship and surrender to being the vessel instead of the activator, or trying to control the dialogue or the narrative. It's the same with energy work. So I really just try to get out of my own way all the time now.
I
And
love that you're saying that. I love it. I wrote down own style of Reiki because I wanted to ask you about it. But that's exactly how it is for me as well. When I learned Azui Reiki, you know, the hand positions and when should I do Seiheki? Should I do Seiheki now? Should I wait to do
yes,
Seiheki? Do I feel like they need this? I feel like they do. And actually that was all just me in my ego state trying to validate my own healing. And as soon as I just allowed, everything changed, and I completely get what you're talking about.
yeah,
And it's so funny, that's why I always think it's good to do healing as long at the same time as doing your spiritual development, because I think they feed into each other, because a surrender in one is a surrender in the other. Experiencing,
yes.
interpreting energy is the same thing. So I love that. I
I love
love
that
it.
too. Yeah, and I totally relate to what you're saying about should I do Seiheki now or Chokure,
Yeah,
and do I need to like activate this? And it's like, no, we don't need to do that. We're just being here as a vessel for the most beautiful work ever possible to come through us. And what a privilege alone that is. We don't need to own
absolutely.
anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And surrender is the key. Easier said
Mhm.
than done at times, but definitely the key for all of it. So
Yeah.
I know you've told us some amazing stories already about how spirit cracked you open and experiences that you've had, but can you give us an example perhaps of a reading that you've done where they've blown your mind, or something that's come in where you've been like, holy moly, this is good?
I mean, gosh, readings, it's almost like amazing when every reading kind of has its own mind-blowing moments.
Yes.
Um, One story, this is actually about me, something that happened to me that was amazing. Like I'd never experienced anything quite like this before. So I'm going to share this story, but my uncle had Parkinson's and dementia and lived in a home in a different state far away from me. And he was very loved and cared for by my family, but I didn't get to see him very often. And he was someone very close to me that I just loved and adored. And when COVID hit, he was in a nursing home, which we all know that those nursing homes were really hard hit. And
Yeah.
he was basically alone, and like we weren't allowed to visit. At one point I flew home, um and they brought him outside and we could sit across like the lawn from him, and my mom and I were there and we sang to him, and he had a moment of like awareness and then he went back in, but that moment of awareness like I held on to in my heart really strongly. But he ended up getting COVID during COVID, and he was alone when he died. And it was, even just thinking about it was one of the most tragic things for me to experience, feeling so powerless.
Mhm.
And like I said, my family was there as much as they could be allowed to be there. So it was hard for everybody. But so he passed. We couldn't have a funeral. All of the things happened during COVID that were just heart-wrenching. Fast forward like a year, and we were going to finally have a memorial for him. It was still COVID, but it was the summer. We could be outside. And so I was asked to speak at his memorial, and I took it very seriously. And every day I would like write about him and my feelings, and I just kind of would get memories flowing. And it was just like I felt him close to me when I was doing that. And it was the night before his memorial. And I woke up at 3 a.m. because my flight was at 5 a.m. And I grabbed my journal, and I woke up, and I could feel him and my grandmother both right there, and they hugged me. I couldn't see them, but I felt them hug me, and I immediately started crying. It was 3 a.m, and it was such a crazy experience to feel that presence. Like I've never felt anything like that before.
Mhm.
I got out of my bed. I walked into the bathroom. I could feel them walking behind me. I
Wow.
went into the bathroom. I had to sit down on the bathtub because I was so overblown by what was happening. And then my lights in the bathroom went on and off for like 2 minutes. All by myself, I'm in there. And it was this experience of, there's something different when that happens, where it was my experience, and I was so excited that I could feel it and know that it was happening and not be afraid. I could hear them talking about me when I was putting my makeup on. Like my grandma was talking about my complexion, and it was just like this sense of love. And so then I flew by myself. My family didn't come with, to the memorial. And when we were at the circle around his ashes, I could feel all of my family there that had passed, like my grandmother and
Wow.
grandfather and his brother. And to me, that was one of the most beautiful experiences, because to me, it solidified everything that I've been able to do in a reading for someone else. Like I
Yeah.
got to have that experience um, that happens for other people in readings. And I know it sounds like I see spirit a lot. I don't see them in physical form that often. At the beginning, it happened. As a child, it happened. And then on this super momentous occasion and a couple other big, big occasions I have. But usually I don't see them except
Mhm.
in my mind's eye. So
Same.
for that to happen, it was really powerful. And
It's incredible.
I just keep getting blown open by the spirit world. It's one of the most beautiful experiences, and I'm so grateful to be able to have it. So,
I think it really changes your life because you're not afraid of death. And that sounds like a weird thing, but I think on some level we're all scared and stuck and restricted. And certainly for me, the more that I work with spirit, the more that I've realized it can be gone so quickly. So choose happiness, choose the things that light you up, follow the
yeah.
joy, and it completely transforms you. Now, I love something that you've mentioned a couple of times here, which is so funny because it's so topical with things that have been coming up in my podcast. So I've just recorded the first part of my spirit stories of things, because I keep asking my interviewees about experiences they've had. And so I've just recorded mine. And then somebody asked a question that was released today about why I can't feel my guides as closely anymore. And I have been discussing that sometimes to get you to start the journey, you'll get really strong physical apparitions, feelings, experiences, but it's not like that all the time. So why is it that, do you think, that it ebbs?
I think it ebbs because it's like there's a point where you need to trust. And if they keep showing you the world like that, you're going to get more egoic, I believe. I feel like you're going to expect that all the time. You're really going to fail in mediumship eventually, because mediumship is so soft, so quiet, so tender. And so I think exactly what you just said. I think everything comes in like a beautiful dangling carrot, so that you want to follow that carrot and be blown open. Again, I keep saying that, but it's really what happens by what can happen when you embrace the spiritual aspect of yourself. You can connect to the spiritual aspect of everything that's around you, right? But ultimately, the whole point of mediumship is the great surrender, the surrender to your life, the surrender to spirit, the surrender to source, the surrender to the experience so that they can work through you. Because like we talked about with energy healing, we think we're all this amazing energy healer and I can do this here for this person and this here for that person. But spirit is kind of like, just get out of the way and let us do the real work. Okay. And I think that the development process of mediumship is one of the most glorious processes I've ever experienced in my life, because it's like this constant, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And then after something like that happens, like your trust builds in the world and the way that you perceive everything around you changes. I used to suffer from severe anxiety, and starting as a medium changed that for me. It's like I finally feel at home in the world because I know I'm just going to college here. I'm here to
Yeah.
learn, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to go back home, and so now I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can do this job and live this life and really enjoy it, because eventually I'm going to go back and I'm going to be hugged by my mom and my dad again, and the great spirit, and so I'm just going to like live my best life now. And for years I just didn't know how to do that because I was so overwhelmed by everything. And now it's like I'm constantly in this state of amazement of everything instead. But yeah, I like to answer your question. I think it's to teach us how to surrender and trust.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
everything you've just said, because you're exactly right. I think we take life almost too seriously. We
Yeah.
feel like we've got to get it right. It's got to be this, and we've got to tick off boxes. And as soon as, I love what you've just said, it's college. Everyone goes to college and expects to make mistakes, to party too hard, to get it wrong. I love that analogy. That's amazing. So good. So how does your experience of spirit now fit in with your upbringing, with your faith? What's
Mm.
your belief in the afterworld? Do you believe in God? Like, talk to us. That's a big one.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah. So I know I love talking about faith and God and spirit. So when I was a little girl, I felt like God was really, really big and I was really, really small. And I talked to my angels all the time, like they were active in my life. That's one really beautiful thing about Catholicism. It taught me
Mhm.
about all the other deities, even though you can't really call it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I felt like I was just someone, I felt like I was someone small. I needed to be small, and that something was inherently wrong with me. Um, as I grew up, that kind of stayed with me in so many ways until the spiritual awakening happened. And so I've always had a life of faith, but now I was talking to God one day and I was walking on the beach, and it was one of those times where I could hear God's voice in my head. And so it was like one of those profound moments. It wasn't my voice. And I call it God, but a great mother, great father too. But God said, fear is not the same as respect. And for me, that was life changing. And that came from the voice of God. And the peace that I felt in my heart was so great and so opening and expansive. And what I've learned through this process of accepting mediumship in my life and accepting the spiritual development path, is that I'm not small and I don't need to be small, and that I am a direct reflection of God, as are you, as is everyone. And 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 because of that, like all and this part of me believes that all of us are on this spiritual path, whether we know it or not, so
Agreed.
that we can come together in the great consciousness and be God. And I don't know, it's a work in progress of understanding, but my trust and my faith and like openness has like gone from really little small, like a marble, to like just expansive. And that in itself is like one of the biggest blessings I've ever had.
I love that. I love that because somebody messaged. I've been asking you all the questions I get on the podcast.
Yeah.
But somebody messaged the other day and said, do you believe in an omnipresent God? And I was like, well, yeah, I do, but I also believe that I am them. And then it just rattled around, and you've put it far more beautifully than I did. But I love it. So tell us, what is something you wish that everybody understood about mediumship? If you could change the whole world immediately to understand this, what would it be?
I think, oh God, there's so many things, but okay. And I mean, there's so many things. Okay, I'll say the most important to me is that I wish that everybody could understand, and I guess maybe I'm speaking to the mediums here too, but also to the people receiving mediumship, is that the whole point is love. And if we can accept that as mediums, we're just meant to share love, I feel like the pressure of mediumship would be less, the ego would be less, the need to be on television or to treat everybody who's sitting in the chair receiving a mediumship reading as like your mother or your grandmother, and understand that in communicating, like everything needs to be communicated with love. And so that's one. Two, I think the subtlety of mediumship. I grew up thinking that, Joe over here was going to be coming in and talking, and everybody could see Joe and hear Joe, and he's, still smells like gasoline from working at the gas station. And mediumship is so different than that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning of the spiritual development, when everything's big and bright and sparkly, mediumship was like that for me at first. And then when the trust came in, spirit world didn't have to work so hard to show up for me anymore. Yeah. So that subtlety of mediumship, it means you're actually advancing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that is important to realize. And then television mediumship is just edited. It's so different than the reality. And not that there's anything wrong with people wanting to be on television or be famous or something like that. It's not my path. I really don't care about that. But I just think mediums need to be careful and remember what their purpose is, why they want to do this, and understand that it's like one of the most profound things to be someone in grief and to receive a reading. Like the power that comes with that needs to be very, very delicately handled.
Incredible. Thank you. You are such a font of knowledge. I could talk to you all day. So a couple of things I need to remember to say. Tell everybody what your podcast is called.
Oh, thanks. So my podcast is called Spirit Guided, and it's with my friend Pearl, who I mentioned earlier. And yeah, we just love talking about mediumship and spiritual development. And it's a relatively new podcast. It's been about a year, and we are having so much fun. And Hannah is going to be on it, and I cannot wait. Can't wait. But yes, Spirit Guided.
Fantastic. And you've also got a really exciting event coming up. You've got Dominic Bogue coming.
Yes. So Pearl and I are kind of doing like our first event together, and we're bringing Dominic Bogue into Colorado, and he is going to be doing a week of readings for people privately. Then he's going to be doing a public demonstration, and then he's going to be doing a workshop for advanced mediums, and we're so excited. So I'll put that on my website so that people can find information about that if they live in Colorado or the nearby area.
Amazing. So, good.
Yeah,
and I will put a link to your website in the show notes, so that makes it easy for everybody to find. So one last little question. If you are somebody who really desperately wants a reading and is going to a medium, what advice would you give them for their first reading?
That's a good one. The first thing I would say is make sure that they feel safe. And I don't mean safe in a way of like bad things are going to happen, but safe with the person that they're sitting with. I think it matters that you feel good with someone and that you like their communication style, because some mediums are going to be really flowery and and really explain things. Some mediums are going to be direct and straight to the point. And we all have different needs. And so I think just feeling good with the person that you're sitting with is really important. So that can come from, word of mouth, or like someone referring you because they know you really well and they've had an experience. But I think if you sit down with someone and it doesn't feel good, I think it's okay to say, this doesn't feel right for me.
Love
Do you know what I mean? Like there's some,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's
I mean,
some
us
time.
Brits, we really struggle with that. We will keep ourselves in really uncomfortable situations for days
Yeah.
just because we're too polite to say, get me out of here. So absolutely, that's great advice. And one last thing, I said it was the last, but I've got one more for you. If you are somebody that is starting your healing journey for yourself, what advice would you give them?
Oh, allow yourself the time because there's no rush. I feel like every opportunity that comes up to heal, or every challenge that comes up that feels difficult, allow yourself to just open your heart into that moment so that there's a space for you to heal. Try not to run away. It's really easy to want to close down because the healing journey, it can be really painful.
Yeah.
But the pain is more of a memory, and the profound aspects that come from looking at that pain and recognizing that that's a memory and not where you are anymore, and that you have an opportunity to grow is just one of the most wonderful things. And then you look back at the memory of healing the memory. It's just, so allow yourself the development and keep coming back to your heart. That's my biggest
Love
advice in
it.
everything.
Erika, you have been amazing. It has been
Oh,
such a wonderful blessing for us to be able to hear your advice. You share things so beautifully. It's been really, really
yeah.
lovely. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us.
Well, you make it easy. I love talking with you. You're so fun and you have such a good heart yourself. So thank you for
Oh,
having me here.
thank
Truly.
you.
Yes.